Hi, everybody. It is the end of World Card Making Day. It is whatever time o'clock in the morning here on the West Coast, and I wanted to kind of share a final project with you. Today, we've been talking and showing projects to include all kinds of people that may not feel represented in the pages of our catalog. And I wanted to show you one other way to include people. I spoke earlier of my time working in a group home, and a lot of those residents in that home were seniors that had trouble with fine motor skills. They had arthritis in their hands. I've also worked with children. I've stamped with kids as young as 3 years old. I've worked with special needs adults who may have had trouble with concentration. There's all kinds of different challenges we have in stamping. So I wanted to share some of the tips to overcome some of those challenges. And of course, now the sun is starting to shine, so we're going to have some fun shadows here. I'm going to be using this Very Best Occasion stamp set, and I've pulled my Stamparatus out as well because this is a wonderful tool. You've seen a few different people demonstrate different techniques with it, and I'm going to show you how we can apply some of those techniques to people that have maybe dexterity or mobility challenges. I'm going to actually start with some designer series paper. This is, I just forgot what it's called, something penciled, I believe. You could do these same techniques with stamped images as well, but I wanted to save myself a step. And some of these tips came actually from my friend Dale, who some of you may remember is the retired demonstrator development manager here in Canada. And he shared a great tip at an onstage once. I'm going to use this pattern here because he shared with us that he has a tremor. So, okay, this is getting ridiculous. Sorry, I'm going to have to close this window. We're letting too much sun in. There we go. That's better. Anyways, Dale shared that he had a tremor, and so one of the things he had trouble with was coloring, and this is quite common for people that maybe older, maybe have some kind of neurodegenerative diseases such as Parkinson's, even things like multiple sclerosis, and even some people just tend to have shaky hands. It's not necessarily pathological. So the tip that he shared was to use a blend, to use the brush tip of a blend and support it with the other hand. And instead of trying to get into the fine details, all that needs to happen is a swoosh. And you just kind of get ink roughly onto the places that you want it. Now, this isn't going to be a strategy for the people who are perfectionists, who really want everything to be exactly in its right place, but it works really well with these kind of open florals and those kinds of things. And all you're doing is kind of making a mark. And you could do multiple marks, you can go in different directions. And what you'll end up with, I'll show you up close a little bit, is just kind of some scribbles on your images. And that is a great way that you can color in some images without having to worry too much about precision, sorry, this pen is in horrible shape. It's flopping all over the place. But you can see kind of, it doesn't have to be super precise. This could also be just a strategy to get things done really quickly. You're just kind of swiping where you want color. And you can do that kind of with as much support or as little support as you need. Is that roughly gonna work for my card front? Yeah, I think so. Okay, now we're gonna go back in with, this is a fresh freesia, and all I'm doing is kind of getting some ink and color onto this page. There is zero precision in this. It's just, And then if you wanted to cut these out, and this is what Dale did, is he just cut out the ones that he liked best. I'm going to use this whole sheet as a background on a card. So I'm going to use all those little guys. All right, turning the page, our next strategy, and one that we've seen from a few people, maybe I'll do the big ones for this one, is to use blending brushes. Again, blending brushes are super forgiving, so it's really easy to just add color. And I saw somebody do this the other day, the same as we do with watercolor, and it made so much sense rather than smushing onto the ink pad, which is what I usually do. You can smush it in that side. And you can go as light or as dark as you need to with these, depending on where works better for you to hold it. Some people are going to have an easier time with this handle, and they can kind of go like that. Or if you need kind of this part to hold on to, you can do that as well. And again, we're not going for precision here. This is just a way to make coloring and these types of images accessible to more people. I'm going to go in with some green as well. I've got some soft succulent here, and we're going to color in some of these little leafy areas. And then again, you could, if you wanted to, fussy cut some of this, or you could die cut if it's an image that has a die cut to go along with it. I'm going to do this starry sky here as well for a little butterfly there, just to bring a pop of a different color in. Let's go around everything with that, but it's went a little bit too heavy there, so I'm just balancing it out. There we go. Easy peasy. Another good one, especially if you're dealing with kids or people that don't have a lot of control and you're afraid that they're going to damage your markers, use the pencil crayons. Most people, even small children, are used to using pencil crayons, and if you break the tip, it's not the end of the world. You can either resharpen it or just use a blunter tip to color with. All right, I'm going to cut these out, and this is something that a lot of people struggle with, and that's where somebody may need a little bit of support, is actually in doing some of this paper cutting. And that's one thing that I always liked to do when I was holding in-person classes, is I would do all the cutting ahead of time so that anybody who had trouble with that wasn't being called out in the middle of a class that they were struggling with cutting. And that just made my classes a lot more accessible. And the more accessible you can make your classes, if you're holding classes, the more people are going to be able to come. So don't forget that this isn't just kind of a nice thing to do and, all those, the right thing to do, however you want to name it. But this is actually a good business decision too. The more things that you can make accessible to people, the wider your audience is going to be and the wider your customer base is going to be. I've talked before at demonstrator events about how you can use diversity either in the types of projects you're offering or like this, how they're being made. You can use that to actually build your business, because you're going to find customers that didn't think that stamping was an accessible hobby to them, either because there's no stamps that maybe celebrate the same types of holidays as they do, or they think that stamping isn't something they can do because of specific challenges that they may have. So just something to think about. On to stamping. There's obviously lots of different ways to stamp. One of the tips I like to share with blocks is these blocks are fairly heavy, so they can be challenging for people to use. I like to keep some of the paper pumpkin or the kit blocks around, because with people who may struggle with the weight, these blocks are the same size this way, but the paper pumpkin block, because it's so much thinner, is actually a lot lighter. So if you have somebody who is struggling with, and I say have, if there's somebody in your class, it may be you that struggles with this. You can always use a lighter block. The other thing I like to do too is actually go to a bigger block. And this is super helpful because it actually gives you more surface area. You can hold on to it a little bit differently. One of the things that I've shown before is you can actually put your stamp up on a block like this, and now you can actually get your fingers underneath, and you can actually hold on to the block like that with your fingers underneath. You can stamp like that as well. You could put your piece up on another block and then stamp like this. And another strategy, if you are somebody or know somebody that has problems gripping and it's beyond what this might help, is you can actually, with these grooves on the side, you can actually use the side of your hand or even the side of your arm if you don't have a hand to hold on to these blocks. It does take a little bit of sideways pressure, especially on these shorter sides, but it is totally possible to actually stamp without even holding on to that block at all. And I'm going to show you how to do that. Here, I'm going to turn it this way, just so my paper piece is turned that way. And you're gonna see I'm just using my thumbs to do this. And then I'm gonna do my little tap, tap, taps. And that's something that people sometimes need reminding of, is that they're light taps. And you can see I'm actually a little bit shaky when I do it this way. But now I've got my hands down on the table and I'm actually kind of pulling with the sides. And now that it's on there, I can even let go and we can go like that. And you can see I've got a perfectly stamped image and I actually didn't have to be able to hold on to that block. So that's a little trick that I really love to share because it does, like I said, make these activities accessible to people who may not have thought it was an option for them. I'm just going to add a little bit, brush a little bit of ink on the side of this. Why not? Because I can. Another strategy for stamping that I found helped a lot when I worked with a group of special needs adults who had a lot of problem with concentration and sort of following through on tasks was actually to use our small, I don't have any handy right now, the small ink spots that are available in the catalog or in paper pumpkin kits. And those are a great tool because what they allow you to do is they allow you to actually ink up a stamp, especially if you're using something like a Stamparatus, without getting too much ink everywhere. The risk with the big ink pads is always that you're getting too much ink everywhere. So that's a good way to get around that. Okay, this piece was die cut, and there's pros and cons to die cutting. Some people find it very difficult to crank through one of the die cutting machines, but what I've actually found is with young children, if you actually support them, they're way easier to use than punches. Punches require a fair bit of dexterity and a lot of hand strength in order to actually punch out shapes. So there's a few different ways that you can kind of make that easier. And this has been something that's super helpful for my customers that have really arthritic hands, where they can't actually punch like this. Sometimes you got to go against the grain, and we're going to go and we're actually going to punch like this. Or you can do this so that you can actually see what you're punching as well, but you're going to put it on the table, and instead of having to have that finger strength, now you can actually use your body strength and actually put whatever you can put on there, and then just use your body weight to punch that piece through. Okay, we're going to stamp again. This time we're going to stamp with the Stamparatus, and I'm going to show you kind of the strategies that I used when we were stamping, like I said, with the special needs adults, and I helped them, and the Stamparatus was super helpful in that I could load this up, and then we've seen this strategy before where we line up basically the hole that we want to stamp into. Hold that down with the magnet, and now when we put this side in, it's stuck there. And now I'm going to go in and again with a small stamp pad or whatever stamp pad you want to use, you can ink this up. And this was something that they could do quite easily because now things aren't moving around with the small ink pads or other linen ink pads like Memento. You're not getting ink everywhere because once you get ink onto something where it's not supposed to be, all bets are off, especially if you're working with kids. And then again, we flipped over, and oftentimes, by the time something's flipped over, a young child or somebody with attention issues may actually have lost interest in that and now be doing something else, and their hands kind of follow them, which with an inky stamp is going to get ink everywhere. But with the Stamparatus, it's easy to direct back and go, oh, you got to push down a little bit. You're not dragging that ink everywhere. And then we have our lovely little piece there. Alrighty, I'm going to put those aside, and sure, we'll do a little bit of sponging on this one too. Where did my purple sponge go? This is my purple sponge. So you can see how there's lots of different strategies that will make stamping more accessible to more people. And I'd love to hear everybody else's ideas too. I know everybody kind of has their little tips and tricks that work for them, and to adapt stamping to something that works for them. I'm just going to make my card bases here if I can find my cardstock. Just going to do a simple black card base. And you can go to absolute extremes to find ways to make stamping accessible to different people. I'm going to share a video, if I can find it again, of a friend of mine, Sue, who actually built basically a machine that helped her daughter, who is in a wheelchair and has a lot of physical challenges to overcome. And it really helped her, and her daughter was actually able to stamp and sell cards, which she was super proud of. And that's not something that a lot of people would expect. They would say, "Oh no, sorry, this child or this person isn't able to do this task, so therefore they can't participate." Well, if you put a little bit of thought into it, and you put a little bit, be creative in how you're doing things, you'll find that stamping is actually accessible to pretty much everybody. I've never found somebody who wanted to that I could not help to be successful in making a card. Is it always the same card as everybody else is making? Are they doing things a little bit differently? Yeah, and that's absolutely okay. Everybody has different abilities and different limitations, and we just have to work within those. Everybody does things a little bit differently, and we can still all be successful and make beautiful things and take pride in what we are able to accomplish. So here would be my first card. And then of course we always want to add a little bit of bling. So let me see if I can find some bling here. Oh, perfect. I have some beautiful iridescent rhinestones here. And here is where we have a whole manner of tools at our disposal, not my ribbon scissors, that we can use to get rhinestones onto our projects. I've never been a huge fan of tweezers, but I know some people that really works for them. And you can use tweezers to get things where they're supposed to go. Personally, I really like to use the pointy end of a piercing tool. That is kind of my go-to. We also have on the other end of the take your pick tool, which of course, why would I have them on the same tool? We got to have multiples, right? When we're collecting all of the things. It just has that putty tip, and that can make it easier to pick things up. And then the trick that I learned from Kara that I thought was great is just taking the actual plastic backing and sliding that rhinestone, and you could use your piercing tool for this too. Well, I guess I got to figure out where I want it first. I will put it over here. And actually sliding the rhinestone right off and popping it where you want it to go. So that is a few different ways that, depending on somebody's dexterity, their strength, you can help them be successful and make a beautiful card. This next one here, I'm going to show you a way that I learned years ago that I absolutely love for adhering these layers, especially when you want them to be straight and you have trouble keeping things straight. The glue is great that I showed you on this, and that's what I usually do. But for some, that's not quite what they're looking for. So for this, we're going to use tear and tape, and we're going to go along all four sides, and we're going to put tear and tape along each of these edges. Now where this one is a little bit tricky, and you may need to use a tool to do it, is you're going to have to peel off just a part of the tape. So this was one that I would actually do with one of my groups, where I would actually do this part for them, and all you're going to do is leave a little swoop to the side like that. Can you see that? So I've just folded it off to the side a little bit. I think technically it's called a dog ear, that little flop over. And you're going to do that on all four sides. And now we're going to put this here, and we can slide it around infinitely until we're happy with it. And then when we're happy with it, all it takes is a little bit of a tack in the corners to get it to stick down. And now what we can do is we've got these tabs, and we're just going to pull those tabs and slide the edges down. And it's not going to move because it's already tacked in the corners, but it's going to stick the rest of it down permanently. And so that's a great way to get these layers lined up and in the right place if maybe you have trouble with that. And now we're going to pop this on again. I loved Jay's trick with marking the backs of your dimensionals to see if you've attached them already. I know peeling off those dimensionals can be a real issue. You can use tweezers. I like to kind of just pop all of my dimensionals on the back. And then once they're stuck on there, you can actually use these tweezers just on the edge, and it'll start pulling up those dimensional backings. You just kind of squeeze the edge and it starts pulling so that you have something to grab onto. So these tweezers from the embossing tools are a great tool. Again, you need a little bit of strength and dexterity to close them, but you can even close them with two hands like that if that's what you need to do. So just play around with how the different tools work to figure out what's going to work for you or your customer or your friend or your family member, whoever wants to stamp with you, that maybe has previously been told, no, this isn't something you can do. We can find ways. I always loved going when I went to craft fairs. I would always invite people to a class, and people would say, oh no, I can't do that. I have this tremor, or I have arthritis. I can't hold a stamp. I used to stamp. That was always the saddest one to hear. I used to stamp, but I can't anymore. And I would be like, yo, we can get you stamping again. Absolutely. Especially with the introduction of the Stamparatus, different options, all those kinds of things. There is so many ways that we can get people stamping. All right, I'm gonna pop some more rhinestones on here, and then I'm almost done. I'll be posting a list again of contacts for all of our presenters today, so don't forget to follow them. Shop with somebody in your area, sign up with someone. You've got all those great deals coming up on October 4th. I'm also going to be posting, or have posted already, I can't even keep track anymore, virtual virtual swap. So you're going to just upload a picture of your card and a little recipe for your card, and we'll swap virtually. So you'll get to see everybody else's projects as well. And then for the projects that the presenters have shown, don't forget that we've got that fundraiser going, so you can buy the PDF with instructions for all the projects. Yeah, and we've got lots of stuff here. I'm sure you haven't watched all of it yet, so you can go back. I'll post the playlist in a bit that has all of the videos in it, and you can watch everybody's presentation and enjoy. Happy stamping. Thank you for joining us today. We wouldn't do this, obviously, if there was nobody watching. So thank you to all the presenters for participating. Thank you to everybody who is watching today and commenting and sharing. It's just been an amazing day, and I'm so proud of this group, and I'm so grateful for all of you who are here. That's all I've got. Happy stamping. Bye.